Nia's breath shattered in her chest as the iron gates slammed behind her. "Stop her!" a guard shouted. Her bare feet slipped on the polished stone as she ran blindly into the vast mansion courtyard until she collided hard with a man in a dark, tailored suit. The impact sent her stumbling back, and the entire world went silent. Because the man she had just crashed into wasn't just anyone, it was Jabari Okoye, the most powerful CEO in the city. His piercing eyes locked onto hers, wide, terrified, but impossibly pure. For a long second, no one moved. Not the guards, not the staff, not even Jabari himself. Then, instead of ordering her out, he quietly said, "Wait." And everything changed. Before we go on, tell me honestly, if a complete stranger ran into your life at the worst possible moment, would you push them away, or listen to what fate is trying to tell you? And where are you watching from right now? Drop your country and local time in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. If you enjoy emotional, dramatic stories filled with shocking twists, justice, and healing, make sure to subscribe and stay with me. For a long second after he said it, no one breathed. Wait. The word hung in the air like something fragile, yet powerful enough to stop everything. The guards froze mid-step. The house staff who had already begun whispering fell into stunned silence. And Nia, she didn't understand. Her heart was still racing wildly, her chest rising and falling as if she had outrun something far more dangerous than security guards. Because she had. But no one here knew that. Not yet. Jabari Okoye stood still in front of her, his gaze unwavering. He was used to chaos bending around him, used to people fearing him, respecting him, never daring to meet his eyes like this. But this girl, she was trembling. Her dress was worn thin from long travel. Dust clung to her ankles. Her hands, small, rough, trembling, looked like they had known more work than rest. Yet her eyes, they weren't calculating. They weren't desperate in the way he had seen 1,000 times before. They were honest. And that unsettled him. Sir, one of the guards stepped forward cautiously, voice tight with authority. She trespassed. "We should escort her out immediately." Jabari didn't look at him. His eyes remained on Nia. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Nia hesitated. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to run, to lie, to disappear before she was dragged back into the nightmare she had barely escaped. But something in his tone, it didn't feel like a trap. "Nia," she whispered. The name lingered between them. Jabari nodded once, slowly. "And why?" he continued. "Did you run into my home like someone chasing your last breath?" The question struck too close. Nia's fingers curled slightly at her sides. I didn't mean to," she stammered. "I was just trying to get away." She stopped herself. "Too late?" Jabari caught it, from what he asked. Silence. The guards exchanged glances. The tension thickened. Nia's lips parted, then closed again. She shook her head quickly. "It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. I'll leave." She stepped back. But before she could stay. Again. That one word. This time it didn't just freeze her. It confused her. The guards were no longer hiding their shock. Sir, the head of security, frowned. "With all due respect, we don't know who she is. This is a security risk." Now finally Jabari shifted his gaze. Slowly. Calmly. But there was steel behind it. "I'm aware," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight, the kind that didn't need to be raised to be obeyed. He looked back at Nia. "You said you didn't mean to come here," he said. "Then consider this your chance to leave properly." Nia blinked. I don't understand." Jabari took a small step closer, close enough that she could see the sharp lines of his face, the control in his posture, the kind of power that didn't shout, it simply existed. "You can leave," he said, "or you can tell me the truth." Her breath caught. Truth. That word again. Dangerous. Because the truth wasn't simple. The truth would drag everything into the light. And she wasn't ready for that. Not here. Not in front of him. Not when she didn't even know if he was part of the reason she was running. She swallowed hard. I just need a place to stay for one night. It wasn't the whole truth. But it wasn't a lie, either. Jabari studied her carefully. She didn't look away. Even now. Even shaking. That intrigued him. Behind him, one of the senior house staff whispered nervously, "Sir, Miss Zuri is expected back this evening." "If she sees?" "I know when she's returning," Jabari cut in calmly. The name meant nothing to Nia, but the tone did. There was tension there. Unspoken. Jabari turned slightly, addressing the staff without fully taking his eyes off Nia. "Prepare a guest room." The reaction was immediate. Shock. Confusion. Disapproval barely hidden. "Sir, that's highly irregular. I didn't ask for commentary." Silence. Heavy. Unquestioned. Then, "Yes, sir." The staff member bowed slightly and rushed off. Nia stared at him, completely lost now. You're letting me stay?" she asked, disbelief clear in her voice. Jabari exhaled slowly, as if considering something deeper than the situation itself. "No," he said. A pause. "Then I'm giving you a choice." Her brows furrowed. What kind of choice? His gaze sharpened slightly. "The kind that tells me who you really are." That sent a chill through her, because suddenly, this didn't feel like kindness. It felt like a test. Jabari continued, his tone measured. "You stay. You work. You earn your place here for a few days." Nia blinked in surprise. "Work?" He nodded. "I don't keep strangers out of charity," he said. "If you stay, you contribute." That made more sense. Safer. Predictable. "I can work," she said quickly. "I'll do anything." The moment the words left her mouth, something shifted. Not in her. In him. Jabari's eyes narrowed slightly. Anything. He had heard that word too many times, from people who meant none of it, from people who would betray anything for comfort. So he tested her. Anything, he repeated. Nia nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Yes. He took another step closer. Now there was no space between them. The courtyard felt smaller, quieter, more dangerous. "Then you'll start in the lower wing," he said. "Cleaning. Kitchen support. Whatever is needed." A pause. Then deliberately, "No special treatment." That part was meant for the staff, and they understood. Nia lowered her gaze slightly, not in submission, but in thought. This wasn't what she expected, but maybe it was exactly what she needed, because staying here, even for a few days, might give her something she hadn't had in weeks. Time. Time to search. Time to breathe. Time to find Quito. Her fingers tightened slightly. "I'll do it," she said. No hesitation now. Jabari watched her carefully, looking for doubt, for cracks, for signs she would back out the moment things got hard. But there were none. Only quiet determination. And something else. Pain. Deep. Buried. Unspoken. It shouldn't have mattered to him. And yet, it did. "Good," he said finally. Then he turned away. The spell broke. The guards relaxed slightly. The staff began moving again. But the energy had changed. Because everyone knew this wasn't normal. This wasn't routine. This was something else. As Nia was led toward the staff quarters, she glanced back once. Just once. Jabari was already walking toward the main house, his expression unreadable. But something about the way he paused just for half a second before stepping inside made her heart tighten. Because for a moment it felt like he was thinking about her too, and neither of them knew it yet. But that single decision, that single word "stay," was about to unravel truths neither of them were ready to face. The first night inside the mansion did not feel like safety. It felt like a lie. Nia lay awake on the narrow bed in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling, as shadows from the tall windows stretched across the walls like silent watchers. The mattress was softer than anything she had slept on in months, but her body refused to relax, because comfort to her had always come with a cost. And she had learned that the hard way. A distant clock chimed somewhere deep within the mansion. Midnight. She turned to her side, pulling the thin blanket closer, but her mind refused to quiet. Quito. The name echoed inside her chest like a wound that never closed. Her little brother's face, small, stubborn, always smiling even when they had nothing flashed through her memory. And then, that night, the night everything disappeared. The shouting, the fire, the men, and Quito, gone. Nia's fingers clenched tightly around the blanket. "I'll find you," she whispered into the darkness. Even if it meant stepping into a place like this, even if it meant trusting a man she didn't understand, even if it meant risking everything again. Morning came too quickly. The mansion woke before the sun fully rose. Footsteps echoed through the halls. Distant voices murmured. Doors opened and closed with quiet precision. This wasn't just a home. It was a machine. And every person inside it had a role. Nia quickly learned hers. "Move faster," one of the senior staff snapped as she struggled to balance a tray of polished silverware. Her hands were still sore from yesterday, her body still aching from days on the road, but no one here cared. "Sorry," she muttered, adjusting her grip. The woman sighed sharply. "This isn't a village kitchen. You drop something here, it doesn't just break, it costs more than you'll earn in a year." The words stung, not because they were cruel, because they were true. Nia bit back her response and kept moving. Observation. That was her strength. She watched everything. How the staff moved, who gave orders, who avoided eye contact, who whispered when certain names were mentioned, especially one. Zuri. Even without meeting her, Nia could feel her presence in the house like a shadow that hadn't arrived yet. "Miss Zuri prefers everything flawless," another maid whispered while folding linens. "She notices everything." Nia nodded quietly. Good. So would she. By midday, exhaustion had settled deep into her bones. But she didn't stop. She couldn't, because every hallway she cleaned, every room she entered, was a chance to find something, anything, a clue, a connection, something that could lead her to Quito. It wasn't random that she ended up here. It couldn't be. Too many whispers in the city had led her toward this place, too many names tied to powerful people. And now she was inside, closer than she had ever been. It happened in the west corridor, a hallway quieter than the rest. Less polished, less used. Nia was wiping down a row of framed photographs when something caught her eye. She froze. Her breath stopped. One photo, half hidden between others. Old, slightly faded. A group of men standing beside what looked like a construction site. Smoke in the background. Debris. Chaos. Her heart started pounding, because in the corner of that image, barely visible, was something she recognized. A scarf. Worn. Faded. Blue. Her fingers trembled as she stepped closer. "No," she whispered. It couldn't be. But it was. She would know it anywhere. It belonged to her mother. The same scarf she wore the night everything went wrong. The same night Quito disappeared. Nia's chest tightened painfully. Her hand lifted slowly toward the frame. "Don't touch that." The voice cut through the silence like a blade. Nia jerked back. A tall man stood at the end of the corridor, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. He wasn't staff. That much was clear. "Sorry," she said quickly, lowering her hand. I was just cleaning. His eyes didn't soften. Some things here aren't meant to be touched, he said. There was something in his tone. Warning. Or fear. Naya nodded slightly, stepping back, but her mind was racing now. That photo, that place, it wasn't random. It was connected. It had to be. Who are they? She asked carefully. The man's jaw tightened. That's not your concern. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving her standing there, heart pounding, mind spiraling, because now she was certain. This house wasn't just a coincidence. It was part of the truth. That evening the mansion changed. The energy shifted. Tighter, colder, more controlled. Miss Zuri is arriving? Someone whispered. Nia felt it immediately. The air itself seemed to stiffen. Staff moved faster, straighter, more carefully, like soldiers preparing for inspection. Nia stood near the edge of the main hall, clutching a folded cloth in her hands. Watching, waiting. The doors opened, and she stepped in. Zuri Adebayo. Elegant, impeccable, dangerous. Her presence wasn't loud, but it was absolute. Every step she took commanded attention. Every glance carried judgment. Her eyes swept across the room, calculating, cold, until they landed on Nia, and stopped, just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. Nia felt it like a chill down her spine. Recognition, not familiarity, but awareness, like a predator spotting something unusual. Zuri tilted her head slightly. Who is that? She asked calmly. No anger, no surprise, just control. One of the senior staff stepped forward nervously. A temporary worker, ma'am. Approved by Mr. Okoye. A pause. Zuri's lips curved into a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I see. She stepped closer, slowly, gracefully, until she stood directly in front of Nia, close enough to study her. Nia forced herself not to look away, even as every instinct screamed at her to do exactly that. Zuri's gaze moved over her face, her clothes, her posture, judging, measuring, calculating. Then, you don't belong here, Zuri said softly. The words were quiet, but they hit harder than a shout. Nia swallowed. I'm just here to work, she replied. Zuri's smile widened slightly. Everyone here is, she said. A pause. Then she leaned in just a fraction closer. But some people forget their place. Nia's fingers tightened around the cloth. She didn't respond. Didn't react. Because reacting would be a mistake. Zuri straightened again. Composed. Perfect. Then turned away like the moment no longer mattered. But it did. Because as she walked past, she spoke one more sentence, so quietly only Nia could hear. Be careful what you're looking for. Nia froze. Her breath caught. Because that wasn't a warning. It was knowledge. Zuri knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough. And in that moment, Nia understood something chilling. She wasn't the only one hiding a secret in this house. And whatever Zuri was hiding was far more dangerous. Across the hall, unnoticed, Jabari stood in the shadows, watching everything. He had seen the way Zuri looked at Nia, and the way Nia didn't back down. That wasn't normal. Not for someone in her position. Not for someone who claimed to be just a worker. His gaze narrowed slightly. Because now, for the first time, he wasn't just curious about Nia. He was suspicious. And something deep inside him whispered, this girl didn't just run into his life by accident. She brought something with her. Something buried. Something dangerous. Something that was about to change everything. By the next morning, Nia understood one thing with painful clarity. Zuri Adebayo did not need to raise her voice to terrify a room. Her power moved in quieter ways, in the way the maids straightened when her footsteps approached, in the way the chef checked every plate twice before it left the kitchen, in the way conversations died the moment her name entered the air. She was not simply Jabari Okoye's fiancée. She behaved like the future owner of everything she touched, and that made her dangerous. Nia kept her head down through breakfast preparations, polishing glassware in the dining hall, while sunlight spilled through the giant windows and turned the silver cutlery into rows of cold fire. The room itself was breathtaking, high-carved ceilings, gold-toned walls, a table long enough to seat a dozen powerful people. Yet under the beauty sat tension so sharp it felt like another set of knives on the table. "Careful with those," one of the older maids murmured beside her. "Miss Zuri hates fingerprints." Nia nodded. "Does she hate anything else?" The maid gave her a quick warning look. "Everything she cannot control." That answer sat heavily inside Nia, because it explained too much. It explained the glacial calm in Zuri's eyes. It explained the sentence she had whispered the night before. "Be careful what you're looking for." Nia had barely slept after that. She had replayed the old photograph in her mind again and again, the construction site, the smoke, the blue scarf in the corner. Her mother had been there. Somehow. At some point. And if that image was in Jabari's mansion, then this house was tied to her family's ruin in ways she still could not see. But Zuri knew she was searching, which meant Nia had already stepped closer to the truth than she realized, and the truth was starting to notice her back. When Jabari entered the breakfast hall, the entire room shifted. He did not announce himself. He did not need to. Authority followed him like a shadow. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp and severe, but there was a tiredness in his face that made him seem more human than he probably wanted anyone to notice. His phone was in one hand, his expression focused, his pace controlled. Yet the moment he crossed the room, his eyes lifted and found Nia almost instantly. It lasted only a second, a flicker, but she felt it. And worse, Zuri felt it too. Zuri sat near the head of the table in an elegant cream dress, every detail of her appearance perfect enough to wound. She watched Jabari approach with a poised smile that seemed warm to anyone who did not know better. "You're late," she said lightly. "I had calls," he replied. "Calls can wait when family is at the table." Jabari took his seat without answering that. The silence between them was polished, civilized, and dangerously thin. Nia kept serving tea, trying to appear invisible, but invisibility had become impossible in this house. The more she tried to disappear, the more she felt eyes on her. Staff eyes, suspicious eyes, and most of all, Zuri's. "Who assigned her to breakfast service?" Zuri asked suddenly. The question cut across the table like glass. One of the senior staff cleared his throat. "Mr. Okoye approved her temporary placement, ma'am." Zuri turned her gaze toward Nia. "Did he?" There was a smile on her lips, but again, not in her eyes. Jabari lifted his coffee cup. "I did." Zuri leaned back in her chair, elegant and unreadable. "You're becoming very generous lately." "It's my house," he said evenly. "And our future," she answered just as evenly. The air tightened. Nia lowered her head and moved to refill water glasses, but her pulse had quickened. These were not two people deeply in love. She could feel that now. Whatever held them together, it was larger and colder than affection. Business, power, history, obligation. Maybe all of them. Then Zuri did something subtle, so subtle most people in the room likely missed it. She extended her hand without looking and nudged a crystal spoon off the edge of the table. It hit the marble floor with a sharp clatter. The sound made several servants jump. Zuri's eyes moved to Nia immediately. "You," she said calmly. "Pick that up." Nia bent to retrieve it. And in that exact moment, Zuri shifted her foot forward. Not enough to trip her badly, just enough to make her lose balance. Nia caught herself before she fell completely, one hand slamming against the floor. Pain shot through her palm. A few guests at the far end of the table let out quiet, awkward laughs before quickly going silent. Heat flooded Nia's face. Humiliation, pure and immediate. For half a second, the entire room seemed to watch her from above, like she was something small and ridiculous. Zuri sighed softly. If you're going to serve in this house, at least learn to stand properly. Nia slowly lifted her head. Their eyes met, and what Zuri saw there was not weakness. It was restraint. Nia wanted to answer, wanted to say, "You moved your foot," wanted to ask, "Why are you afraid of me?" wanted to throw the spoon in her face. But she did none of those things. She stood carefully, placed the spoon on a tray, and said, "I'm sorry, Mom." Zuri smiled, because she thought she had won. But Jabari had seen it. Not all of it, not the foot, but enough. He had seen the tension in Nia's body before she bent, seen the flash in Zuri's expression, seen the mockery settle over the table like perfume. His jaw tightened. "That's enough," he said. The room fell still. Zuri turned to him, eyebrows lifting delicately. "Enough of what?" "This isn't a performance." The words landed harder than expected. For the first time, a faint crack appeared in Zuri's calm. "Are you correcting me?" she asked softly over a servant. Jabari set down his cup. "I'm correcting the atmosphere." No one moved. No one even breathed too loudly. Nia stood frozen tray in hand, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Zuri's smile returned, but it was thinner now. "How noble," she said. "You've always had a weakness for lost things." That sentence changed something in Jabari's face, only for an instant. But Nia noticed, because pain recognized pain, and whatever Zuri had just touched inside him, it was old, deliberate, cruel. Jabari rose from his chair. The breakfast meeting clearly was over. "I have work," he said. And just before he turned away, his gaze brushed Nia again. Not long. Not enough for anyone to accuse him of anything, but enough to say, "I saw." And somehow that made her chest tighten more than the humiliation itself, because kindness when a person has suffered for too long can feel more frightening than cruelty. Cruelty is familiar. Kindness asks you to hope, and hope is dangerous. Later that afternoon, Nia was sent to the upper library to dust shelves no one else liked touching. The room smelled of leather, old paper, and money that had lasted through generations. Tall windows overlooked the gardens. Sunlight rested across the rugs in golden rectangles. She moved carefully between shelves, but her mind stayed trapped in breakfast. Zuri had tested her in public. Not to embarrass her alone, to send a message. "I can humiliate you whenever I want." And worse, Jabari had defended her, not openly enough to declare war, but enough to make Zuri notice. That was bad. Very bad. Because dangerous people became more dangerous when they sensed attention shifting away from them. Nia reached for a cloth on the ladder and heard voices below. She froze. Jabari and Zuri had entered the adjoining study. The door remained half open. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Zuri was saying. "And you're pushing too far," Jabari replied. "I'm protecting what we built." "No," he said. "You're controlling everything around you." A pause. Then Zuri's tone sharpened. "That girl is not random." Nia stopped breathing. "I know," Jabari said, quietly. Her heart stumbled. What did he know? How much she walked in, terrified, asking for shelter. He continued. "That doesn't make her guilty. It makes her useful to someone," Zuri snapped. "Or dangerous. Which one worries you more?" Silence. Cold telling. Nia gripped the edge of the ladder, because that question mattered, and Zuri did not answer it. When she finally spoke, her voice had returned to velvet. "You're letting sentiment cloud judgment, and you're letting fear cloud yours," Jabari said. The sound of heels clicking sharply across the floor followed. Then the study door slammed. Nia stayed perfectly still until she heard Zuri leave entirely. Only then did she breathe. Her hands were shaking, not because of the argument, because of what hid beneath it. Zuri was afraid, not annoyed, not merely jealous, afraid. And fear in a powerful person was often the first crack before collapse. But it was also the most dangerous moment of all, because a person like Zuri would not wait to be exposed. She would strike first. Nia climbed down slowly, pulse pounding. As she reached the bottom shelf, she found something tucked between two old ledgers. A photograph, different from the one in the corridor. This one was smaller, more private. A little boy stood beside a woman whose face had been partially torn away from the image. But the boy, Nia's blood ran cold. She knew that face, older than she remembered, thinner, but unmistakable. "Quito," she whispered. The photograph slipped in her trembling fingers, and from the doorway behind her a voice said softly, "So now I know exactly what you came here for." Nia spun around. Zuri stood there, smiling. For one terrible second, Nia could not move. The photograph shook in her hand. Zuri stood in the doorway as if she had been there all along, one shoulder resting lightly against the carved frame, her expression almost amused. There was no surprise in her face, no confusion, only satisfaction, like a hunter finally watching the trap close. Nia forced herself to breathe. She could not let panic speak for her. She could not let fear expose more than the photograph already had. "I was dusting," Nia said, her voice quieter than she wanted, and it fell from the shelf. Zuri's smile deepened. Of course it did. She stepped into the library with slow, elegant calm. Her heels made soft sounds on the polished wooden floor, but to Nia they felt louder than thunder. The room, so warm with afternoon light only moments ago, now felt cold. Zuri stopped a few feet away and extended her hand. "Give it to me." Nia looked down at the photograph again. The edges were worn, the image grainy, but the boy in it. She would know him anywhere. Quito, older than the child in her memory, standing stiffly beside a woman whose face had been deliberately damaged, not accidentally torn, removed. Someone had wanted that woman hidden, and if that woman was their mother, then this picture was proof. Proof that Quito had been alive after the night he vanished. Proof that someone connected to this house knew it. Nia's fingers tightened. Zuri noticed immediately, and the softness disappeared from her eyes. "I said," she repeated, "give it to me." Nia raised her chin slightly. "Who is the boy?" A dangerous silence followed, the kind of silence that told the truth before words ever did. Zuri tilted her head. "That is not your question to ask." "But you know him," Nia said before caution could stop her. "You knew what I was looking for before I said anything." Zuri took one more step closer. "And you are forgetting yourself." There it was again. Power, not loud, not messy, just precise and cruel. Nia's heart pounded, but she did not step back. She had come too far to retreat now. Too many nights, too many lies, too much pain. "My brother disappeared years ago," she said, voice trembling but clear. "And his face is in this house. So yes, now it is my question." For the first time, something hard flashed fully across Zuri's face. Not fear, anger, pure and sharp. Then, just as quickly, she smoothed it away. "Your problem," Zuri said softly, "is that you mistake desperation for courage." Nia opened her mouth to answer, but footsteps sounded in the corridor. Both women turned. Jabari entered the library with a folder in one hand, then stopped. His eyes moved from Zuri to Nia, then to the photograph clutched between Nia's fingers. The temperature in the room dropped even further. "What's going on?" he asked. His voice was level. Too level. Zuri answered first, effortlessly. "I found your temporary worker going through private family materials." Nia's head snapped toward her. "That's not true." Zuri gave a tiny, polished sigh. "You were holding a hidden photograph from a restricted shelf. It fell out while I was cleaning." "Convenient." Jabari looked at Nia. "Did you search the shelf?" "No." "Did you remove anything from it?" Nia hesitated, hating that the answer sounded guilty, no matter how she said it. "I picked up what fell." Zuri folded her arms. And then she started asking questions about people she has no business knowing. Jabari's gaze sharpened. What people? Nia swallowed. This was the moment, the edge of a cliff. She could stay careful, or she could jump. The boy in the picture, she said. I know his face. Jabari's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Zuri noticed too. Nia saw it, and in that instant she understood something important Jabari knew more than he wanted to admit. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough to react. Zuri held out her hand toward Nia again. Give me the photograph. This time Jabari spoke first. No. Both women turned to him. He crossed the room and took the picture from Nia himself. He looked at it for only a second, but that second told Nia everything. His fingers stilled, his jaw tightened. His breath seemed to catch before he controlled it again. You recognize him? Nia said softly. Jabari lifted his eyes to hers. What exactly are you doing in this house? He asked. The question hit like a slap, not because it was unfair, because it came from him. Zuri stepped in smoothly. Finally. Nia stared at Jabari, hurt rising fast beneath her fear. I came here to work. No, he said, voice hardening. You came here looking for something. Silence pressed down on the room. He was right. But hearing it in that tone, in that cold, controlled suspicion, cut deeper than she expected, because some reckless part of her had wanted him to believe her, wanted him to be different, wanted his quiet kindness to mean more than curiosity. I came looking for my brother, she said at last. Yes? Zuri let out a soft laugh. There it is. Nia turned toward her. You knew. Zuri's expression never changed. I know many things. That doesn't mean they belong to you. Jabari's eyes remained fixed on Nia. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? She asked. That shut the air out of the room. Because the truth was obvious. He didn't even believe her now. He looked away first. And that was answer enough. Zuri seized the moment like a blade. This is exactly why I warned you, she said to Jabari. She came here under false pretenses. Lied to your staff. Entered private areas. Handled confidential material. She is either a manipulator or a spy. I am neither, Nia said, anger finally breaking through. I'm a sister trying to find her family. Zuri's voice sharpened. Then go search somewhere else. Nia stepped forward. Where is he? Jabari's tone turned cold. Enough. The command landed hard. Nia froze. He looked at her now not as the frightened girl in the courtyard, but as a threat he was forcing himself to assess. I gave you a chance, he said. A place in this house. You repaid it with lies. Pain flashed across Nia's face before she could hide it. I never stole from you. You stole trust, Zuri said, and somehow that sentence wounded worse than the accusation should have, because trust was exactly what Nia had never truly had from them, to begin with. Jabari held the photograph at his side. His expression was unreadable again, but his eyes had gone distant, the way eyes go when they are fighting something internal and losing. Finally he said, You shouldn't have come here like this. Nia stared at him. Not because of the words, because of what they meant. He had chosen caution, chosen distance, chosen the safer lie over the dangerous truth. Zuri won, at least for now. I understand, Nia said quietly. Her voice had changed, flattened, gone still. That seemed to unsettle Jabari more than anger would have. Do you? He asked. She nodded once. Yes. I understand that poor people are only welcome in this house when they stay useful, silent, and grateful. Zuri inhaled sharply. How dare no Nia cut in eyes burning now? How dare you stand there and call me a liar when you are hiding my brother's face in your walls? Zuri's composure cracked. Take care, girl. But Nia was already past fear. For days you've watched me, mocked me, tested me, she said. Why? Because I'm dangerous, or because I'm getting close enough? Jabari's voice thundered this time. The entire room fell silent, even Zuri. Nia's breathing was ragged now, her eyes wet but fierce. Jabari looked at her for a long moment, and when he spoke again his voice was lower, more restrained, more painful. "You will leave this house tonight." The words hit her like something physical. She had prepared for suspicion, for humiliation, for cruelty from Zuri. But not this. Not from him. Not after the way he had looked at her, not after the way he had seen her in the courtyard and said, "Stay," as though fate itself had spoken through him. Nia gave a small, broken laugh. "So that's your answer?" Jabari said nothing. That was answer too. Zuri's victory returned in the faintest curve of her mouth. Nia saw it, and she understood with icy clarity that this had been the goal all along. Push her, corner her, let Jabari's doubt do the rest. The trap had not begun today. It had only closed today. Nia lifted her chin, wiping one tear away before it could fall. "Fine," she said. "I'll go." She looked at Jabari one last time. But one day she said quietly, "You're going to learn what your silence cost." Then she turned and walked out of the library before her pride could collapse under the weight of what had just happened. Behind her no one stopped her. Not Zuri, not the servants gathering in the hallway, and not Jabari. That hurt most of all. But in the corridor as Nia reached the stairs with shaking legs and a heart that felt split open, she heard something that stopped her cold. Zuri's voice. Low, urgent, no longer smooth. You had no right to let her see that picture. Then Jabari's voice quieter and far more dangerous than before, and you had no right to know what it was. Nia stood frozen for 1 second more. Then she kept walking. Because now she knew two things. First, Quito was real and alive long enough to be hidden. Second, Zuri was afraid. And fear meant she had something to lose. Which meant this was not the end. It was war. Nia did not cry until the mansion gates closed behind her. She had held herself together through the walk down the grand staircase, through the cold stares of the staff, through the humiliation of packing her few belongings into the same worn cloth bag she had carried into the house. She had even held herself together while one of the guards escorted her out with a politeness that felt more insulting than cruelty. But when the night air hit her face and the iron gates shut with a final metallic groan, something inside her cracked. She stood on the empty roadside, under a pale wash of moonlight, gripping the strap of her bag so hard her fingers hurt. The mansion loomed behind her like a kingdom made of lies, lit windows, stone walls, perfect silence. Beautiful from the outside, merciless inside. Nia pressed a shaking hand to her mouth, not because she wanted to scream, because she refused to, not for them, not for Jabari, especially not for Jabari. His face would not leave her mind, the controlled hardness in his eyes, the way he had looked at her as if she were both a problem and a question he no longer had the courage to solve. The way he had chosen silence when it mattered most. She hated herself for how deeply that hurt. Because she had known him for days, not years. Because a man like him did not belong in the same world as a woman like her. Because she should have known better than to let a single act of kindness feel like shelter. Yet she had. And now that kindness had turned into exile. Nia wiped her face roughly and started walking. She did not know where she would sleep that night. She only knew she could not stop moving. Not while Quito's face was still burning in her memory. Not while Zuri's voice still echoed in her ears. Not while the truth sat just beyond her reach, close enough to wound but not close enough to hold. Jabari did not sleep either. Long after the mansion quieted and the lights in the guest wing went dark, he remained alone in his study with the old photograph on his desk. He had looked at it a dozen times already. The little boy in the image, the torn face of the woman beside him, the faded edges, the hidden place it had been kept. He knew the photograph, or rather he knew of it. It belonged to a box of documents his late father had ordered stored away years ago, old records from a construction disaster tied to one of the company's early properties. Jabari had never paid the box much attention. He had inherited too many files, too many debts of memory, too many silences. But now silence had a face. Naya's face. Hurt, furious, betrayed. He rubbed a hand over his jaw and closed his eyes. "What exactly are you doing in this house?" He had asked the question like an accusation, but the truth was worse. He had asked it because a part of him already feared the answer. He feared what it might expose, about his family, about the company, about Zuri, and increasingly about himself. A knock came at the study door. He didn't answer immediately. The knock came again. Then the door opened without permission. Zuri stepped inside. Of course, she wore a silk robe over her evening dress, elegant even in irritation. Her expression was controlled, but only barely. The smoothness she performed for others had thinned tonight. "You're still awake," she said. Jabari did not rise. "So are you." She shut the door behind her. That girl should never have been allowed inside. Jabari's eyes hardened slightly. "Her name is Nia." Zuri gave a faint smile. "Interesting. You remember it so well." He ignored that. "You were in the library before I arrived. So how did you know what she was holding?" Zuri's pause was nearly invisible. But he saw it. "She looked guilty," Zuri said. "That's not an answer." Zuri crossed the room slow and measured, then stopped at the desk. "You are exhausted. And because you are exhausted, you are creating shadows where none exist." Jabari leaned back in his chair. "And because you're uncomfortable, you are avoiding the question." For a second, the room held stillness sharp enough to cut. Then Zuri let out a soft breath and changed tactics. "She lied to you from the beginning," she said. "Surely that matters more." "It does," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. Zuri heard that too. "You're troubled because she cried?" she asked quietly. "Because she looked wounded when you sent her away." "Do you think suffering makes people innocent?" Jabari's gaze lifted slowly. "No. But cruelty makes guilt easier to hide." Something cold flashed in Zuri's eyes. "You think I was cruel. I think you wanted her gone before you knew who she was." That landed. Zuri folded her arms. "And what if I did?" He said nothing. She leaned in slightly. "You are a public man, Jabari. A powerful man. People do not just accidentally enter your life. They arrive with motives, and you are certain of hers." "Yes." Why another pause? Too long. Jabari noticed, and for the first time, genuine suspicion settled into his chest like stone. Zuri saw it happening and smiled again, smaller, tighter, more dangerous. "You are forgetting who has stood beside you all these years," she said. "Who has protected your interests. Who has carried the weight of your family's messes when you were too noble to look at them directly." That sentence hit harder than she intended, or perhaps exactly as hard as she intended. Jabari straightened. "What messes?" Zuri's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "A miscalculation. Then recovery. Your father's old scandals. The accidents. The settlements. The families who came asking questions." She glanced at the photograph. "The past has a way of returning in dirty shoes." There it was. The insult. The contempt. The thing beneath her polish. Jabari looked at her for a long moment and realized something unpleasant. Zuri had not merely been defending him from outsiders. She had been controlling access to his past, and maybe, just maybe, choosing which truths he was allowed to see. "Leave the photograph," he said. Zuri's chin lifted. "I wasn't taking it." "No," he said quietly. "You were just making sure I never asked about it." For the first time that night, she had no perfect answer. She turned away instead. "Believe what you want." When she reached the door, she paused without looking back. "If you reopen this," she said softly, You may not like what it says about your family." Then she left. Jabari remained still long after the door closed, not because her warning frightened him, because it confirmed too much. Nia found temporary shelter in a small church on the edge of the old market district. The woman who let her in did not ask questions, only pointed her toward a wooden bench and offered a thin blanket and tea so weak it barely had color. By then the sky was beginning to pale. Dawn softened the city's hard edges. Street vendors were setting up their stalls. Motorbikes rattled to life. Somewhere nearby, a baby cried and a radio began singing an old love song through static. Nia sat with the blanket around her shoulders and stared at the floor. She had failed. Or at least that was what the exhaustion wanted her to believe. She had gotten inside the mansion, found proof, then lost her place before she could pull the truth fully into the light. But beneath the shame, something stronger was beginning to rise. Fury. Not wild fury. Focused fury, because now she knew she had not imagined anything. Kito's face existed inside that house. Zuri knew why. Jabari suspected more than he admitted, and someone years ago had torn a woman's face from a photograph for a reason. Child? Nia looked up. An old woman stood a few feet away holding a broom. She had silver threaded through her braids and a back bent slightly by years, but her eyes were alert and deeply kind. "You were talking in your sleep," the woman said. "You kept saying a boy's name." Nia swallowed. "My brother." The woman nodded as if that explained everything. Then after a pause she added, "There is someone here to see you." Nia stiffened instantly. Fear shot through her first. Then caution. "Who?" The woman glanced toward the side entrance of the church. "She said her name is Mama Ayo." Nia stood so quickly the blanket slipped from her shoulders. The housekeeper, the old woman from Jabari's mansion, the one who had once hinted that the past and her family were connected. Nia's pulse hammered as she moved toward the side entrance. Mama Ayo stood in the morning light wearing a simple dark wrapper and headscarf, her face lined with worry. She looked smaller outside the mansion somehow, less like part of the machine, more like a witness who had been silent too long. "Nia," she said softly. Nia stopped a few steps away. "Why are you here?" Mama Ayo glanced over her shoulder, making sure they were alone. Then she reached into the cloth bag at her side and pulled out an old metal key. It was tarnished heavy and marked with a small engraved number. Nia stared at it. "What is that?" Mama Ayo pressed the key into her palm and closed Nia's fingers around it. Her hand shook. "Your family was not lost by chance," she whispered. "And the boy you are looking for was taken after the factory fire." Nia's breath vanished. The world around her seemed to pull back the church walls, the morning noises, the city all fading beneath the force of that sentence. Mama Ayo's eyes filled with pain. "There is a storage room under the old Okoye textile warehouse," she said. "No one goes there now. Your mother went there once before she disappeared. If there are records left, they will be there." Nia could barely speak. You knew Mama Ayo's face crumpled with shame. "I knew enough to be afraid," she said, "not enough to be brave." Nia stared at her stunned, trembling, half drowning in hope and rage at once. "Why tell me now?" Mama Ayo looked toward the rising sun. "Because last night," she said, voice breaking, "I saw the same look in your eyes that your mother had the day she begged this family to return her son." Nia's knees nearly gave way. She closed her hand around the key so hard the metal bit into her skin. And in that moment the story changed. This was no longer just about a missing brother. It was about a buried crime, a family destroyed, a past bought and locked away. And somewhere beneath an abandoned warehouse, the next piece of truth was waiting. By noon, the city felt like it was holding its breath with her. Nia stood across the street from the old Okoye textile warehouse, her fingers wrapped tightly around the rusted key Mama Ayo had given her. The building looked dead from the outside, its faded sign hanging crooked above a chained gate, its upper windows dark with grime, its walls sun-bleached and cracked by years of neglect. Weeds had pushed through broken concrete. Torn plastic bags drifted across the yard like restless ghosts. Nothing about it suggested answers. And yet Nia knew with the terrible certainty of instinct that this place had swallowed part of her life. Somewhere behind those walls, her mother had come looking for Quito. Somewhere inside, something had happened that powerful people had spent years burying. Nia adjusted the scarf around her head, lowered her face, and crossed the street. The front gate was locked, but the side entrance had half collapsed. She squeezed through rusted metal and stepped into the yard. Every sound suddenly too loud, her breath, her footsteps the distant cry of gulls circling somewhere above the river. A broken loading cart lay tipped on its side. Sheets of old roofing metal leaned against a wall. The air smelled of dust, oil, and rain trapped in concrete. She found the basement access behind the main structure almost hidden beneath overgrown brush. A heavy steel door, a small lock box. Her pulse quickened. She slid the key into the rusted padlock. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then a hard click. The sound echoed straight through her bones. Nia froze and listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, only the wind scraping loose tin against brick. She opened the door. Darkness breathed up from below. The basement stairs were narrow and uneven, leading into stale, black air, so thick it felt preserved. Nia used the flashlight on her phone and moved slowly, one hand skimming the wall for balance. Dust floated in the beam. The lower room was larger than she expected, part storage, part office graveyard. Metal cabinets lined one side. Rotting crates sat stacked against the walls. A broken desk sagged under old ledgers and mold-stained folders. It smelled like forgotten time. Nia swallowed hard and started searching. Drawer after drawer held scraps of the past. Employment files, shipment records, factory maintenance logs, incident reports with pages missing, receipts signed by men whose names meant nothing to her. Some documents had been water-damaged beyond reading. Others had clearly been removed in haste, leaving gaps where truth used to be. She kept going, because she could feel it. That sense that she was close enough now to touch the edge of the knife. At the back of the room stood a grey filing cabinet with a bent lower drawer. It took both hands to pull it open. Inside were hanging files marked only by year. Nia's breath caught. One tab had no date, only a word written in thick black ink. Relocation. Her hand trembled as she pulled it free. Inside were papers clipped together with a corroded pin, a typed memo, a payment ledger, 2 signed transfer sheets, and beneath them a handwritten list of names. Children's names. Her eyes moved frantically over the page. Musa, Anele, Tariq, Imani, then Quito Mbele. Nia stopped breathing. He was there. Not imagined, not lost in memory. Written in ink, handled by human hands. Real, alive at least when this file was made. Her knees weakened and she grabbed the cabinet to steady herself. Tears blurred the page. She blinked them away furiously and kept reading. The memo above the list was worse. Temporary relocation of minors following site disturbance. Transfer authorized under private instruction. Public record not advised. Below that a signature. Not Jabari's. Not his father's either. A different name. A woman's name. Zuri Adebayo. Nia stared at the page as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something less monstrous. But they did not. Zuri, years ago, connected to the movement of children after the factory fire, connected to Quito, connected to a cover-up deliberately kept off public record. For a second, Nia could not think. Her mind simply shattered around the fact of it. Zuri had not merely known something. She had been involved. Maybe from the beginning. Maybe before Jabari ever understood what kind of woman stood beside him. Maybe she was the reason Quito never came home. The air in the basement suddenly felt too thin to breathe. Nia grabbed the file, stuffed it into her bag, and reached for the remaining papers. Then stopped. There was another sheet at the bottom. A medical intake form from a private juvenile facility on the outskirts of the city. Patient name K. Mbele. Status transferred under sponsor protection. Remarks: do not release identity without executive authorization. Her hands began shaking so violently she almost dropped the page. Executive authorization. A child hidden behind power. Not adopted. Not rescued. Controlled. Stored. Moved like a problem. She pressed a fist against her mouth to stop the sound rising in her throat. Quito had not vanished into tragedy. He had been taken into a system. A hidden one. And the people who did it had enough money and influence to make a child disappear on paper. Nia wiped her eyes and forced herself to keep moving. She took photos of everything. Every memo. Every list. Every signature. Then she checked the facility name twice, memorizing it until it burned inside her skull. She was about to leave when she heard it. A sound above her. Faint. Metal shifting. A footstep. Nia's whole body went cold. Someone was upstairs. She killed the flashlight instantly and stood in darkness so complete it felt physical. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. Another sound. Closer now. Then a beam of light sliced across the stairwell. Someone had entered. Nia backed behind a row of crates, clutching her bag to her chest. Dust coated her palms. Her phone screen dimmed in her hand. The light moved slowly across the room. A man's voice muttered under his breath. Not Jabari. Not a guard, she recognized. Then another voice, female and sharp, with controlled annoyance. Find the cabinet. Zuri. Nia shut her eyes for 1 second, then opened them again. No room for fear now, only survival. The flashlight beam swung nearer, passing over the broken desk, the sagging shelves, the cabinet drawer she had left open. Someone's been here, the man said. Zuri descended the final steps, heels deliberate even on the rough concrete. Then don't stand there announcing it, she snapped quietly. Find what she took. Nia's pulse hammered so hard she thought it would betray her. She was right. Zuri had come here because she knew exactly what this place held. This was no distant involvement. This was ownership. Nia risked a glance between the crates. Zuri wore dark glasses and a fitted coat, elegant even in a basement full of rot. But elegance could not hide the tension in her posture. She was angry, urgent, cornered. Good. That meant Nia mattered. It meant the file mattered more. The man opened cabinets, cursing under his breath. If she copied anything, she did. Zuri said, That girl is desperate, not stupid. There was a beat of silence. Then the man asked, Do we bring her in? Nia's blood froze. Zuri considered. No, she said at last. Not yet, not yet. The words were somehow worse, because they meant Zuri had plans more careful than simple violence. Then Zuri added colder than iron. She'll run to Jabari first. The man laughed quietly. And you think he'll believe her? Zuri's mouth curved with confidence that made Nia sick. He already chose doubt once. Men like him mistake hesitation for morality. Nia felt the truth of that sentence stab through her, because it was true. Jabari had doubted. He had hesitated. He had sent her away, and Zuri knew exactly how to use that weakness. But then Zuri said something that changed everything again. If he starts digging, she murmured, remind him what happened to his father when he asked questions about the children. Nia went still. The children. Plural. Not just Quito. Not just one hidden crime. A whole pattern. A whole system. And Jabari's father, whatever his sins, had been afraid of it too. The man gave a short nod, and the boy Zuri's jaw tightened. Move him. Nia nearly made a sound. Move him. Quito was alive. Alive now, not years ago, now. Somewhere close enough to be relocated. Her vision blurred for a second from the force of hope and terror colliding inside her. Quito was alive. Quito was alive. She repeated it silently like prayer and lightning at once. Zuri turned sharply toward the dark corner where Nia hid. Nia flattened herself against the crates. The woman's instincts were viciously sharp. For 1 second, Nia thought she had been seen, but then Zuri looked away and said, "Check outside." She couldn't have gotten far. The man headed back toward the stairs. That was her moment. The only one. Nia slid low behind the crates, found the far maintenance hatch she had noticed earlier, and forced it open just enough to squeeze through. Rust scraped her arm. Her bag caught once, then tore free. She crawled through a narrow service tunnel full of dust and old insulation until she saw daylight ahead. When she stumbled out behind the warehouse, sunlight hit her face so hard it felt unreal. She ran, not because she was afraid anymore, because she finally had what she came for. A name, a file, a signature, a facility. And the most important truth of all Quito was alive, and Zuri was the one keeping him hidden. By the time Nia stopped running, one thought had become absolutely clear. This was no longer about begging powerful people for mercy. It was about exposing them, and for that she needed the one thing Jabari had failed to give her before. Not affection, not pity, truth. He was going to have to choose. Her or the woman who had built her power on stolen children and buried fire. And this time, if he chose silence again, Nia would burn his world open without him. Jabari was in the middle of a board meeting when his phone vibrated for the 3rd time. He ignored it once, then twice. By the 3rd time, something in him sharpened, because the caller was Mama Ayo, and Mama Ayo never called during business hours. Around the polished conference table, men in expensive suits were talking about quarterly expansion, investor confidence, and a merger strategy that had taken months to prepare. Screens glowed, charts shifted. A legal advisor was outlining risk exposure in a tone so calm it could have put a storm to sleep. But Jabari heard none of it. He looked at the phone again. Answered. Yes. Mama Ayo did not waste a second. She went to the old warehouse. Jabari's spine went rigid. Who but he already knew? Nia, Mama Ayo said. And if she found what I think she found, then Zuri will go after her before sunset. The boardroom disappeared around him. He stood so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. Several executives went silent and looked up. What are you saying? He asked, already moving toward the glass doors. I'm saying, Mama Ayo replied, voice shaking, that the past is no longer buried. And if you still have any decency in you, you will stop protecting the wrong person. The call ended. Jabari stood frozen for one brutal second. Then everything rearranged itself inside him. Not neatly, violently. The photograph, Zuri's evasions, the hidden file box. Her panic. Her need to remove Nia before questions could grow roots. And now, the warehouse. The old warehouse. A place tied to his father's silence, old settlement rumors and records he had been told were incomplete. He turned back toward the boardroom. All eyes were on him. I'm ending this meeting, he said. One of the directors frowned. We're about to vote on the acquisition. Then vote without me. Jabari. I said it's over. His voice cut through the room like a blade. No one argued again. Because this was the version of him they feared. Not the controlled executive. The man whose calm had broken. He walked out, already calling his driver. But halfway down the corridor he stopped. No, not the driver. Too visible. Too slow. He changed direction, headed for the private garage, and drove himself. Nia sat in a half-abandoned internet cafe near the old bus station, her hands still shaking as she copied files from her phone to 3 different cloud accounts and an old USB she bought from the counter with the last of her money. The cafe smelled of dust, hot wires, and stale instant coffee. A flickering fan moved heat from one corner to another without truly cooling anything. Teenagers played games in the back. A tired mother rocked a baby near the entrance. The owner barely looked at her. Good. She needed invisibility. She had sent the documents to one local journalist whose name she found in archived reporting on labor abuse, then to a human rights legal clinic, then to an email address for Jabari Okoye himself. She stared at the last sent confirmation pulse racing. Part of her hated that she had sent it to him. Hated that after everything, after the doubt, the exile, the wound of his silence, some part of her still believed he needed to know before the world exploded. Or maybe she just wanted to force him to choose. No more hesitation, no more shadows, no more distance dressed up as caution. Choose. A car horn blared outside. Nia flinched so hard the mouse slipped in her hand. Then her phone lit up. Unknown number, she answered anyway. Silence. Then Zuri's voice. Smooth. Cold. I was wondering how long it would take you to become foolish. Nia's stomach turned to ice. She stood instantly and scanned the street outside. What do you want? You took what belongs to me. It never belonged to you. A soft laugh. Everything belongs to the person strong enough to keep it. Nia gripped the phone tighter. Quito is alive. Silence. Tiny, but real. Then Zuri said, That depends on how reckless you choose to be next. The words hit with surgical precision. Threat. Confirmation. Cruelty, all in one sentence. Nia's chest burned. You touch him and I will expose everything. You already tried, Zuri said. Do you know what happens when a village girl accuses a respected businesswoman and a CEO's future wife? People call it delusion, desperation, extortion. Nia forced herself to breathe. You signed the relocation file. That signature will disappear. I copied it. And I can destroy your credibility before sunset. The door of the cafe opened behind her. Nia turned sharply. 2 men entered in dark jackets. Not police, not customers. Looking, searching. Her blood ran cold. Zuri heard the silence on the line and smiled into it. You should run now, she said. It will make this easier. The call ended. Nia moved instantly. She grabbed the USB, yanked the charger from her phone, and slipped out the side door into a narrow alley, smelling of engine grease and old rain. She ran without looking back. Footsteps pounded behind her seconds later. They had seen her. Of course they had. The alley forked into a maze of market lanes and back streets. Nia pushed through hanging fabric crates of oranges, buckets of fish packed in melting ice. Vendors shouted at her. Someone cursed as she knocked over a stool. A child cried. A motorcycle nearly clipped her hip. Her lungs burned. Her bag slapped against her side. Behind her, the footsteps kept coming. She cut through the old market out into a wider road, then froze. A black SUV was parked at the curb ahead. For one wild second, she thought it was Zuri's. Then the driver's door opened. Jabari stepped out. His eyes found her instantly. And behind her, the men running after her slowed. They recognized him, too. Nia stopped in the middle of the road, breathless, furious, half-shattered by adrenaline and disbelief. Jabari crossed toward her fast. What happened? She laughed once, a sharp, broken sound. Now you want to ask? The men behind her turned to retreat. Jabari saw them and moved faster. You two stop! They did not. He lunged, grabbed one by the arm, and slammed him against the side of a produce truck with a force that turned nearby faces toward them. The second man swung. Jabari ducked, hit him once in the ribs, and the man staggered back, swearing. Street noise erupted. People stopped to watch. Phones came out. The first man tore loose and both ran into traffic, disappearing between motorbikes before Jabari could catch them. He turned back toward Nia. She had not moved. You're bleeding, he said. She looked down. Rust from the maintenance hatch had sliced her forearm earlier. Dust and sweat had hidden it until now. It's nothing. His eyes searched her face. No, it isn't. For 1 second, everything between them rushed back. The courtyard, the library, his silence, her pain, the impossible pull he had tried to dismiss as timing, curiosity, bad judgment. But now she stood in front of him, hunted, and he had the awful clarity of a man realizing too late that the danger had never been her. Nia pulled the phone from her bag and shoved it toward him. I sent you the files? He took it, read the first page, then the second. His face changed. Not slowly, not subtly. It fell apart in stages. Confusion, recognition, shock. Then something darker than either. Where did you get this? The warehouse. He scrolled faster. The relocation memo. The list of children. Zuri's signature. The medical transfer form. His hand tightened around the phone so hard his knuckles whitened. She hid this from me, he said, but it sounded less like a statement than a wound. She did more than hide it. Nia snapped. She built herself on it. Jabari looked up, and Nia saw it. The moment the world he trusted cracked open beneath his feet. Not only because of Zuri, because of his father, his family, his company, his own blindness. She said she was protecting the company, he murmured. She was protecting herself. People were still staring. Traffic still moving around them. The city still loud. But inside the space between them, something had gone deathly quiet. Jabari handed the phone back and said, "Get in the car." Nia stared at him. "No." His jaw tightened. Those men were following you. And whose fault is that he absorbed the blow without defending himself? Because he couldn't. Because she was right. Mine, he said. The answer landed harder than excuses would have. Nia's throat tightened, but she did not soften. Not yet. You sent me away, she said. You chose her. I chose doubt, he said bitterly. And she used it. That was honest. Infuriatingly honest. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me carefully. If these files are real, and I believe they are, then Zuri won't just attack your name. She'll move Money People Records witnesses. She'll burn everything before anyone reaches it. Nia swallowed, because she knew he was right. What do you want from me? She asked. Jabari held her gaze. A chance to fix what I broke. And if you fail... His expression hardened into something she had not seen before. Not power. Purpose sharpened by shame. Then I lose everything. A black sedan turned the corner at the far end of the street. Too fast. Too deliberate. Jabari saw it at the same moment she did. His eyes narrowed. That's not yours, is it? The sedan accelerated. Straight toward them. Jabari reacted instantly, grabbing Nia by the waist and throwing both of them behind the SUV, just as the sedan swerved up onto the curb. It slammed into fruit crates instead, sending oranges exploding across the road like scattered fire. People screamed. Glass shattered. The sedan reversed hard and sped away before anyone could reach it. Nia lay against the pavement, Jabari's arms still around her, both of them breathing like they had just surfaced from drowning. He looked at the wreckage, then at her, then back at the road where the car had vanished. And when he spoke, his voice had changed. It was no longer uncertain, no longer cautious. It was the voice of a man who had finally seen the war for what it was. She just made her move, he said. Nia slowly sat up, heart hammering. Around them the market erupted in shouting and confusion. But all she could hear was one truth crashing through the noise. There was no going back now, not for him, not for her, not for the empire Zuri had built on silence, because from this moment on the story would not be about suspicion anymore. It would be about collapse, and Jabari Okoye had just chosen his side. By nightfall the city was no longer whispering, it was watching. The crash in the market had spread across social media within hours, grainy videos of a black sedan mounting the curb, screaming vendors, shattered fruit crates, and most importantly, Jabari Okoye, dragging a terrified young woman out of harm's way. No one knew the full story yet, but people had begun to ask questions. Why was the CEO with a village girl everyone in his household had treated like a nobody? Why did the girl look hunted, and why had the woman beside Jabari in society pages for years, Zuri Adebayo, suddenly gone completely silent? Inside one of Jabari's private offices downtown, silence felt far more dangerous than noise. The room overlooked the city skyline, all glass and steel and power. But tonight, it felt like a bunker. Phones rang, screens glowed, legal files spread across the conference table. 2 trusted security officers stood outside the door. Mama Ayo sat near the back with her hands clenched in her lap like someone praying for courage she should have found years ago. Naya stood at the center of it all, still wearing the dust of the day, Quito's file in her bag, and her heartbeat refusing to settle. Jabari was on the phone with his head of legal. "No," he said sharply. "Do not alert the board yet. Lock internal server access to anything tied to old warehouse assets, closed juvenile transfers, or private settlement accounts. If anyone tries to remove files, I want the access logs frozen." He listened, eyes darkening. "Then suspend them." He ended the call and turned. For a moment he simply looked at Nia. Not the way he had in the courtyard, not the way he had in the library. This was different. This was the look of a man who knew his apology, however sincere, would never be enough and intended to act anyway. "We have one advantage," he said. Nia folded her arms. "One," he nodded. "Zuri thinks she still understands how I move." Mama Ayo let out a quiet, bitter breath. "That woman has been studying everyone in your life for years." Jabari's mouth tightened. "Then tonight, she studies me failing." Nia frowned. "What does that mean?" He walked to the table and opened a folder. "It means we don't attack her privately. We force her into the light." On the table lay copies of the warehouse documents, photos Nia had taken, screenshots of the transfer memos, and something else, a company invitation list. Nia moved closer. "What is this, the McKenna Foundation Gala?" Jabari said, "Tomorrow night. Press donors, executives, politicians, board members. Zuri is scheduled to speak." Nia looked at him. "You want to confront her there? I want to give her the one thing she never expects." His voice hardened. "An audience she cannot buy fast enough." A lawyer at the far end of the room cleared his throat nervously. "Public confrontation carries risk. If we go forward without securing the boy first, she may destroy him as evidence or move him out of reach." The sentence turned Nia cold. "Then we find him first," she said. Jabari nodded. "Already working on it." He picked up another sheet, an address matching the juvenile facility in the transfer records. The original site is now officially listed as a rehabilitation annex under a different corporate shell. On paper, it's inactive. In reality, one of my security analysts found recent utility consumption there. Nia's breath caught. Recent. That meant people were inside. Maybe Quito. Maybe others. Jabari looked at her carefully. "We move on the annex tonight." She stepped forward instantly. "I'm going with you." "No." The answer came too fast, too protective, too familiar. Nia's eyes flashed. "You don't get to shut me out now. This is not about shutting you out," he said. "If Zuri expects anything, she expects you to go looking yourself. And if Quito is there, I'm not staying behind while strangers bring me news about my own brother." Jabari held her gaze. The room tightened around them. Then Mama Ayo spoke softly from the back. "Let the girl go." They turned. Mama Ayo's face was lined with grief, and something fiercer than grief. "I kept quiet once," she said. "Out of fear. Out of habit. Out of the lie that powerful people will eventually do the right thing if given time." Her eyes shifted to Jabari. "Time is what predators use." That landed. Jabari looked away first, then back to Nia. "You stay beside me," he said. "No improvising, no separating. If anything feels wrong, you listen immediately." "Do you understand?" Nia gave a single hard nod. It wasn't obedience. It was agreement between 2 people who had both run out of softer choices. The annex stood on the edge of the industrial district beyond the main road behind fencing, half hidden by dry brush and rusted signs warning against trespassing. Officially abandoned. Quietly maintained. A perfect place to hide human beings. Jabari's vehicles arrived without company markings. No sirens, no uniforms that could be recognized from a distance. Just trusted security and one independent attorney with a court-ready affidavit in case the rescue turned into a public legal battle before dawn. Naya sat in the back seat, gripping the metal key Mama Ayo had given her, though she no longer needed it. It had become a talisman now. Proof that silence could open. "You're shaking," Jabari said from beside her. She didn't deny it. "If he's not there," he answered carefully, "then we keep going." That was not comfort, but it was honest. And tonight, honest was the only thing that mattered. The outer gate gave way faster than expected. Too fast. Jabari noticed immediately. "Something's wrong," he said. One security officer leaned in from the front. No visible guards. Exactly. They moved anyway, because backing away now would only give Zuri more time. Inside the annex smelled of bleach-damp walls and secrets disguised as order, dim hallways, locked office doors, old fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A nurse at reception tried to speak, saw Jabari, and went pale. "This site is closed," she began. Jabari set the transfer document on the desk in front of her. "Then explain why your closed site has live utilities, active patient logs, and the name K. Mbele listed under sponsor protection." She stared at the page and said nothing. That was answer enough. Security moved, doors opened, rooms checked, records seized. Naya could barely breathe. Every step felt like the world narrowing toward one unbearable point. Then from the far corridor a voice shouted, "Sir, back here!" Nia ran before Jabari could stop her, past 2 rooms, past a medicine cart, past a half-open office, to a locked inner ward. One officer was already forcing the door, when it gave Naya stumbled inside and saw him. At first her mind refused to believe what her eyes were giving it. A thin young man sitting on the edge of a narrow bed. Older, taller, shoulders bent inward by years of being made smaller than he was. But the face Kito, her brother, alive. He looked up slowly, as if sudden hope was more dangerous than fear. His eyes were cautious, hollowed by too much time. Then they found her face. Everything stopped. The room, the air, the years between them. "Nia," he whispered. The sound of her name in his voice shattered her. She crossed the room in one broken rush and fell to her knees in front of him, hands gripping his arms like she had to confirm he was flesh and not memory. "Kito," she choked out. "Kito, it's me. It's me." He stared at her for one stunned second. Then he broke too. He pulled her into him with the desperate strength of someone who had learned not to expect rescue and no longer knew how to survive it. She held him and wept openly now, for the fire, for the nights searching, for their mother, for every year stolen by strangers with money and signatures, for the child he had been when they took him. Jabari stood in the doorway and looked away for a moment, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. This was what power had hidden. Not paperwork. People. A security officer entered with a tablet. "Sir, there are more files, more names, at least 6 unregistered transfers connected to shell accounts. We also found medication logs and isolation records." Jabari turned back, all softness burned out of him. "Seize everything," he said. "Back up the drives. Notify the independent investigators now." Then he looked at the officer again. "And call every major press contact on the gala list. Tell them tomorrow night's speech just changed. The gala was chaos before it even began." By the time donors, executives, and cameras filled the ballroom the next evening, rumors had already ignited across the city. Anonymous leaks, talk of hidden children, transfer records, a secret annex, a sedan attack tied to a high-profile business family. No outlet had the complete story yet, but everyone could smell collapse. Zuri arrived dressed in silver and calm. Too calm. She moved through the ballroom with practiced elegance, greeting guests, touching arms, smiling for cameras. But her eyes were sharper tonight, scanning too quickly, calculating exits, even while pretending confidence. She mounted the stage just after 8. The lights warmed her face. Microphones waited. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate service integrity." And the side doors opened. Every head in the room turned. Jabari entered first. Nia walked beside him, and between them, thinner than he should have been, but unmistakably real, walked Quito. The room gasped as one body. Zuri stopped speaking. For the first time in years, her mask cracked in public. Only slightly. But enough. Jabari took the stage without asking permission. His voice, when it came, was calm enough to terrify. "This gala was meant to honor charity," he said. "Instead, it will witness truth." Screens behind him lit up. Documents, signatures, transfer lists, the annex, the relocated miners. The name Zuri Adebayo stamped across years of hidden cruelty. Murmurs turned into open shock. Cameras rose. Guests stepped back from Zuri as if corruption could stain skin by proximity alone. Zuri recovered quickly, lifting her chin. "This is fabricated." Nia stepped forward. "No," she said. "This is my brother." Quito looked directly at the crowd, trembling but standing. "She kept us hidden," he said hoarsely. "Those of us who remembered too much." The silence that followed was not empty. It was judgment arriving. Zuri's eyes darted once toward the side exit. Jabari saw it. So did security. She did not get far. As officers moved in, the ballroom erupted, and at the center of that storm, Nia stood beside her brother while the empire of lies around them finally began to fall. The ballroom did not recover after Zuri's arrest. It shattered, not in noise alone, though. There was plenty of that, shouting reporters, gasping donors, security radios, crackling glasses breaking somewhere near the back as guests stumbled away from the chaos. It shattered in reputation, in illusion, in the quiet, ugly understanding that some of the most polished people in the room had smiled beside evil for years and called it elegance. At the center of it all, Zuri Adebayo no longer looked untouchable. Even as security officers held her at the edge of the stage, she fought to preserve the one thing she had built her life around: control. "This is a performance," she snapped, her voice ringing across the ballroom. "You are all watching a jealous man destroy his own future because a manipulative girl fed him a story." Some people still looked uncertain. That was how power worked. Even cornered, it tried to drag doubt into the room and make truth seem emotional, unstable, unclean. But Nia had crossed too much darkness to fear that now. She stepped forward, one hand holding Quito's trembling fingers. "She calls me manipulative." Nia said, her voice not loud, but cutting through the room anyway, because she thinks poor people only deserve to be believed when we suffer quietly. The room fell still again. Every camera turned toward her. Every face watched. Nia felt the weight of that attention, but it no longer crushed her. She had been humiliated in silence, dismissed in silence, exiled in silence. Tonight, silence belonged to no one. She hid children. Nia continued, her eyes locked on Zuri. "She signed papers that moved us like we were cargo. She buried names, buried mothers, buried fires. And when I came looking for my brother, she tried to make me look mad, dishonest, dangerous." Her grip on Quito tightened, but the dangerous one was never me. A murmur moved across the crowd like wind through dry grass. One of the investigative officers stepped onto the stage and addressed the room formally. "We have recovered records, witness statements, transfer logs, and live evidence from an undisclosed facility connected to shell organizations under active investigation. Additional arrests are pending." That changed everything, because scandal could still be denied. But an investigation with evidence turned denial into panic. Several board members who had arrived earlier in confident suits now looked visibly sick. One older donor stepped back as though distance might erase her years of association with Zuri. A journalist near the front was already speaking into a phone voice, shaking with adrenaline. Jabari watched it all with a face carved from shame and resolve. This was his world breaking open, his name, his company, his father's legacy. The structures that had protected him were now exposing him too, and somehow he did not look away. That mattered to Nia more than she wanted to admit. Zuri looked from the officers to the screens behind the stage, and finally to Jabari. Whatever affection she had ever performed for him was gone now. In its place stood something colder and more honest. "You self-righteous fool," she said. "Do you think exposing me saves you? Your father knew, your family profited, your company built itself on buried people." The sentence struck the room like lightning. Several heads turned sharply toward Jabari. There it was, the poison inside the truth. Not just that evil existed, but that good people could be connected to it by blood, by cowardice, by convenience, by inherited silence. Jabari stepped closer to the microphone. "Yes," he said. The ballroom went dead quiet. His answer shocked even Zuri for a fraction of a second. "Yes," he repeated steadier now. "My family's name is tied to this. My company's history is tied to this. And I was blind for too long because blindness is comfortable when the walls protect you." He looked out across the room. "That comfort ends tonight." No one moved. No one interrupted. Because truth spoken by the powerful against themselves had a force almost no one was prepared for. Jabari continued, each word precise. "As of this moment, I am stepping down from all active executive authority, pending a full independent audit and criminal cooperation review. Every sealed file connected to these transfers will be opened. Every asset route tied to shell accounts will be surrendered. Every survivor identified will receive legal and financial support through an independently supervised restitution fund." A wave of stunned whispers tore through the room. Some called it noble. Some called it madness, but Nia knew what it really was. Cost. At last, real cost. Zuri laughed once, harsh and disbelieving. "You would burn your empire for them." Jabari turned toward Nia and Quito, then back to Zuri. "No," he said quietly. "I would rather burn a lie than keep living inside it." For the first time since Nia had met him, she saw Zuri with no power left to hide behind. Not elegant, not untouchable, just a frightened, furious woman who had mistaken control for invincibility and silence for loyalty. As officers led her away, she twisted once more toward Nia. "This won't heal you," she hissed. "Nothing returns what was taken." Nia met her gaze without flinching. "No," she said. "But it stops you from taking more." That was the final word. Zuri disappeared beyond the ballroom doors, and with her went the illusion that truth could be delayed forever. The days that followed were merciless. The media storm became a legal storm, then a national storm. Shell companies were exposed. Former employees surfaced. 2 retired administrators from the annex were arrested within 48 hours. Archived reports tied the old factory fire to intimidation, unlawful transfers, and missing compensation claims. Families began coming forward, some with faded photos, some with old letters, some with wounds they had carried so long they had stopped believing anyone would name them. Nia watched it all unfold with Quito beside her in a quiet recovery house Jabari arranged through independent counsel rather than his company. That detail mattered to her. He had finally understood that help should not feel like ownership. Quito was alive, but survival had not left him untouched. He startled at doors closing too loudly. He ate too quickly at first, like someone afraid the food might vanish. Some nights he woke, shaking from dreams he could not fully explain. He remembered years in fragments, different rooms, changed names, routines enforced by fear. Older boys disappearing after asking too many questions. Nia sat with him through every silence, every flinch, every memory that arrived like broken glass. Sometimes they spoke about their mother. Sometimes they couldn't. But slowly, painfully, they began to become brother and sister again, instead of only 2 survivors bound by grief. One afternoon, while Quito slept in the next room, Jabari came to see her. He was dressed simply, no tie, no armor of public power. The exhaustion in his face had deepened over the past week, but so had something steadier. Humility, perhaps, or maybe the beginning of a man learning that repair is not a speech. It is repetition. It is burden. It is staying. Nia stood by the window as he entered. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them no longer felt like accusation, but it was not ease either. Jabari stopped a respectful distance away. "How is he today?" "Better," Nia said. "Tired, angry, alive?" He nodded once. "Alive is a beginning." She looked at him then. "You almost didn't believe me." The sentence was calm. That made it harder. Jabari lowered his eyes briefly, then met hers again. "I know. That cost us time. I know." That cost him time. This time his expression tightened with visible pain. "I know." Nia folded her arms, not defensively, but to hold herself steady. "Do you understand why I can't forgive you quickly?" "Yes." "And if I never do?" He accepted that, too. "Then I will still spend the rest of my life doing what should have been done long before I met you." The answer disarmed her more than pleading would have, because there was no demand in it, no romantic pressure, no attempt to make remorse look beautiful, just accountability, raw and unadorned. Jabari reached into the folder he carried and placed several documents on the table near her. "The restitution fund has been transferred to independent trustees," he said. "The old warehouse land is being converted into a memorial and support center for the affected families. And these..." He touched the top sheet lightly. "These are the ownership transfers for the recovery house, plus educational and legal provisions for Quito protected beyond any company influence." Nia stared at the papers. "You're giving this to us, I'm returning what was never mine to hold over you." Her throat tightened unexpectedly. That sentence, so simple, so clean, landed in the place where rage had lived longest. Not erasing it, but softening its edges. She stepped closer to the table and looked over the documents. Everything was structured exactly as he said. Independent, irrevocable, transparent. No trap, no leash, no hidden debt dressed up as generosity. When she finally looked back at him, his face had changed in the light. Or maybe hers had. He still looked powerful. He always would. But now she could see the wounds power had hidden too, the loneliness, the discipline, the burden of growing inside systems that teach men to command before they ever learn how to confess. "I loved you too quickly," he said suddenly. Nia blinked. The confession was so direct it stole her breath. Jabari gave the smallest, saddest smile. "Or maybe not too quickly. Maybe I simply recognized something in you before I had earned the right to stand near it." She said nothing. He went on, voice lower now. "I am not asking you for an answer today. I am not asking you for anything, actually. Only this, whatever life you build from here, let it be free. And if one day you decide there is still a place for me in it, I will come honestly. Not as a rescuer, not as a man above you, just as myself." Nia felt tears rise, but they were nothing like the tears she had shed at his gates. Those had come from abandonment. These came from seeing something broken choose truth instead of pride. She looked past him toward the small room where Quito slept, then back at the man who had failed her, helped find her brother, and willingly set fire to his own world rather than protect corruption. Healing, she realized, was not the same as forgetting, and love, if it deserved to survive, had to grow where truth had already been planted. Weeks later, after the first trials began and the public frenzy settled into long, serious justice, Nia stood at the opening of the memorial center, built on the land where silence had once been stored. Families gathered beneath a warm African sky. Some crying, some praying, some simply standing still because survival itself had exhausted them. Quito stood beside her, thinner than he should have been, but stronger now, his shoulders no longer curved inward so sharply. Mama Ayo stood on his other side, tears shining openly in her eyes. Across the courtyard, Jabari waited near the back. Not on the stage, not at the microphone, just present. Exactly where he said he would be. When the ceremony ended, Nia found herself walking toward him before she had fully decided to. He straightened slightly as she approached, but did not speak first. That too mattered. Nia stopped in front of him. For 1 second, all the versions of them seemed to stand between them. The frightened girl in the courtyard, the suspicious CEO in the library, the hunted witness in the market, the broken brother and sister on a rescue room floor. Then she said quietly, "I can't go backward." Jabari nodded. "I know, but I can choose what comes next." Something changed in his eyes. Not hope, exactly. Something gentler. Permission to hope. Nia let out a small breath, and for the first time since all this began, allowed herself to smile. Not because everything was healed, but because healing had finally begun. "You can walk with us," she said. It was not a dramatic declaration. It was something better, a real one. Jabari's face softened in a way she had never seen before, and when he stepped beside her not ahead, the future did not feel like a fairy tale. It felt earned. A country girl had once rushed blindly into a CEO's mansion by accident, but love had not saved her. Truth had, justice had, courage had. And only after all that, love learned how to stand in the light. Some wounds do not come from poverty alone. They come from being ignored, doubted, and treated as if your pain matters less because your voice is small. Nia's story reminds us that truth often enters powerful rooms wearing humble clothes, and those who benefit from silence will always try to call that truth dangerous. But this story also teaches something deeper. Justice is not only punishment. Justice is exposure. Justice is returning names, dignity, and choice to the people who were stripped of all three. And healing does not begin when the past disappears. It begins when someone finally stops lying about it. Jabari could not undo the damage his silence helped prolong. Nia could not recover the years stolen from her family. Quito could not simply become the boy he once was. Yet even after betrayal, grief, and buried cruelty, change was still possible. Not perfect change, not instant change. Real change, the kind built on confession, responsibility, and action. Sometimes love at first sight is not the end of a story. Sometimes it is only the beginning of a test. What matters is not who falls first. What matters is who chooses truth when it becomes costly, who stands beside the wounded without trying to own them, and who dares to heal without forgetting what justice required. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Do you believe love can survive betrayal if real accountability follows? And where are you watching from today? Drop your country and local time below. If you enjoy emotional, dramatic stories filled with shocking twists, justice, and healing, subscribe, and stay with me for the next one.